Welcome to Ford High School Weekly. I'm your host, Dion Amade. This week, we have big recruiting news, and our friend Rod Thompson will be here with the scoop on that and basketball playoffs. Last Friday, the Ford Game of the Week featured the Broken Arrow Regionals, where Sand Springs played Jinx and Broken Arrow hosted Enid. Here are our friends, Steve Marshall and Rod Thompson.
The home of the Broken Arrow Tigers. That's where the basketball game was played between the Sand Springs Sandites and the Jenks Trojans, opening round of regional play in the 6A high school state playoffs. Let's take a look at some of the highlights from this contest to see who comes out on top, whose season continues, and who is done for the year.
Yeah, started with Chase Martin, able to find Grand Tata with a nice knockdown right there. He letting you know it's three, but these guys kept rolling and knocking it down right there was Corbin Fisher for the Sandites, the underdog in this game. They continue to keep it rolling. Then in transition, Mr. Go Lightly. They can go lightly, able to get the finish. Now down inside, tried to get it. And then this guy again, Corbin Fisher's going to go in transition, able to finish. And boy, Sand Springs was rocking and rolling, Steve, able to get it done. Skip across, you need a big three. Get the man Chase Martin to knock it down. That was a huge shot. Put him back up. Now down inside, there go that man again, Corbin Fisher, able to knock it down for the Sandites. Now loose ball, scrum. This was trying to tie it up. Everett couldn't get it to go, and the Sandites come away with the upset, 43-40 over Jinx. Eric Savage gets it done, and boy, a tremendous game. I think when you look at this game, Steve, you have to circle that third quarter. First half, the leading scorer, Marlo White, goes out. Third quarter, they come in playing inspired basketball, and Sand Springs able to come away with this win. On paper, wasn't supposed to win this game, but a very impressive win.
Enid Plainsman and the Broken Arrow Tigers. Let's go take a look at the highlights of that one and see how that came out. Again, you lose today, your season is over. So let's take a look and see how this one turned out, Rod.
Outstanding job, and got going with Mr. Sullivan. The sniper from outside left was knocking it down, and this guy McCurdy, he was big in that first half, 11 first half points. There you see the little scoop by him. Sullivan say, hey, I got an answer, a little up and under, and one right there with the finish. Again, he had this team rocking and rolling. Now in transition, McCurdy, he'll find Pender for the finish. Both teams going back and forth. Now watch this. I like this play for the lead, the steal. I'm going to step back, and I'm going to knock it down right there to give his team the lead. And boy, Coach Foster had this team rolling. But this guy began to take over the game. Anthony Allen able to get it done. He was able to lead this team in the second half and be able to get the win. And watch this. Put the ball back on the numbers, young fella, and finish it. The Tigers get the win, 55-44. Outstanding job, 54-44, able to get it done. Outstanding job by Broken Arrow to get the win in that matchup, Steve.
Yeah, it was a good game, back and forth the whole way, but in the end, Broken Arrow is able to pull away, extend that lead from 3 to 6, and then eventually getting the 10-point differential that you see right there. Big rebounding edge for the Tigers, 27-19, probably something else that you would look at from the stats.
Man, those were some great games. Speaking of great, our main man, Rod Thompson, will be joining us after the break to take a deeper look into the playoffs. Ford High School Weekly will be right back. Welcome back to Ford High School Weekly. Like I mentioned before the break, we're going to have my man, Rod Thompson, here to bring you the basketball action that you need to know, and he is here right with us. Rod, how's it going?
Going good, man. Going good. Hey, it's March Madness time. March is up on us. And so, Dion, a great time of the year. It's feeling pretty good outside. And it's time for some hoops, man. Got some teams trying to raise that gold ball. So always a great time of the year.
Certainly is. Certainly is. Speaking of that gold ball, we had a lot of basketball action last weekend, and there's even more this weekend. So kind of tell us what happened. Break it down for us.
Well, I think it's interesting. We talked before in the last show, Dion, just if COVID was going to have an effect on some of these teams. But I think you start seeing teams, and definitely in the bigger classes, some of the teams that went home that maybe didn't anybody think was going home. I think when you look at as far as this side, Bigsby, they were playing extremely well all year. But Muskogee is much improved. Muskogee was able to get that win against a good Bigsby team, to set up a game as they move on. And then I think when you look again, you look at that Jinx Sand Springs matchup that we had. And I'm just kind of looking at the games that some people circled that maybe could win either way or what you would consider upsets. And you look at, that Jinx Sand Springs boys game. Eric Savage does it again. Marlo Fox was out, a lot with foul trouble. They were able to get the win against a very good Jinx team that many felt had a chance to win the state championship, to be able to advance. And I think that when you look on the other side, you look at what Norman North is doing and Kellen McCoy doing a tremendous job. Of course, over here, Bigsby's girls are doing tremendously well, playing well. They advance on. Also, Union, you kind of expect them to advance. Coach Redmond has them playing well. And then you talk about Darlene Caleb at Sapulpa, have those girls playing well. So some good matchups that I think we'll have. And, boy, it's crazy to believe that this time last year, it was close to the season being over with. This year, hopefully we can keep it going. And this week, a couple of teams punched their way to the state tournament. So a great time of the year, Dion.
Yeah, and a question that a lot of people are asking that you kind of briefly mentioned there that we would like you to expand on and go into a little bit of detail. What happened with that Jinx Trojans team? I remember I went down and checked them out versus Bixby a couple weeks ago, and they looked like they were firing on all cylinders. Chase Martin was lightened up from the outside, but they come against Sand Springs and, they're one and done out of the playoffs, unfortunately. So what happened in that game?
Well, I think you deal with a couple of things, and this is what we talked about. I think you deal with the COVID issue. This was a team that was out for a while, not making any excuses for them, not being able to practice. Coach had COVID. And so you finally start getting back, trying to get some kind of rhythm. But a lot of credit goes to Sand Springs. I mean, let's face it, on paper, they were not supposed to win this game. I think Eric Savage did a good job of controlling the game, keeping it close early. And the further it went on, you can kind of see the pressure of the game affect Jinx a lot more than it did Sand Springs. As we said, Marlo Fox was out, the leading scorer for this Sand Spring team because of foul trouble. But other guys were able to, Fisher and different guys were able to step up. And it got tight and got towards the end of the game. You could see the pressure really affected Jinx. And, boy, Savage, hey, he did a tremendous job. He's an experienced coach. Of course, state championships he won at Tulsa Memorial. And you saw his experience really come through and come away with that win. And then the next day give Broken Arrow a pretty big scare. So, Sand Springs is a team you don't want to play on paper. They're not traditionally Sand Springs like we're used to seeing last year. But that kind of sums up that game, Dion. And a lot of credit to Sand Springs and Coach Savage being able to beat a very, very good Jinx team.
Yeah, Coach Savage is used to having winning ball clubs, and he knows how to coach in those final minutes there and put his team over the edge. Another thing that I wanted to ask you, there's some players individually that really stood out this weekend. One of the guys that I really took notice of is, Anthony Allen over there at BA. So talk about some of the players that you were impressed by and that you're going to need to see more of going on into this playoff run.
Well, I think that when you look over here, you have to look at Anthony Allen. I think he's a difference maker for this Broken Arrow team. Didn't play early in the season. He's back now. I mean, at 6'5", 6'6", long arms, plays inside, and not afraid, not allergic to the post. He blocks shots. He can be a matchup problem. And in that game with Enid, he was a difference in the game. He didn't really have the ball much in his hand in the first half. In the second half, they got it to him at the high post. He was a matchup nightmare for the other guys that were guarding. He could put it on the floor and get to the basket, can really play above the rim, and he brings a lot to that team. And I think if Broken Arrow is going to get back to winning the state championship, it's going to go through that young man. I mean, they have outstanding guards. When you talk about McCurdy, and of course Tyler Pender, he does a tremendous job. But Anthony Allen is the key. Now, in that same game, Enid, who's a much improved team, I think one of the best shooters in the state. You have to talk about Tay Sullivan. I mean, he was impressive. They gave him he was awarded the player of the game, and that lets you know that usually doesn't happen on a losing team. But, hey, can really shoot the basketball. Only a junior. He's a guy to look for. I don't know how good Enid will be next year, but this kid can really shoot the basketball, knows and understands how to play. So those are two guys that really, stood out for me. I was able, of course, to see those games and see them play well, and I thought they were big come playoff time. And Kyler Mann for Owasso is also playing extremely well. He's another kid, a 2021 kid that probably should be receiving a lot more attention as far as college coaches. I mean, long-rangey athlete. He's another guy that's a key piece to teams, as you see them going. And on the other side, you got to talk about J.J. White for, again, Norman North, who's playing well right now. Kellen McCoy, has him playing extremely well. And he's a kid that kind of leads that team. So those are a couple of players I think that stand out, and I'm sure we'll have more to talk about later. But those are four right there that really stood out. I think is going to be important for their ball clubs.
Now, on the girls' side of the whole playoff matchup, who are some of the teams that are standing out to you and that you're looking forward to seeing go all the way this year?
Well, I think over here you have a couple of teams that really stand out. I think this Bigsby team is much improved. Gracie Worley is an outstanding player, but they get great inside play from Meredith Mays. They do a tremendous job. They're a team that shoot the ball extremely well and play really hard. All in this conference. And then you have Sapulpa, Poindexter. Dad played at TU. She's an outstanding player. And, of course, the Staley Hurd, outstanding player for that team at Sapulpa with Darlene Caleb. And then you go Joe Redmond. We know his experience. He's been in the state championship games on the boys' side, coaching at Booker T. Washington, now over at Union. They have a tremendous team. It's going to be interesting to see because these three teams I just mentioned are so used to playing against each other because they're in the same conference. So they're a very good team. And then when you talk about the other side, Edmond North, it's very good. You have some teams that I think that when you look at it, no clear-cut favorite that anybody would say consensus like we've had in years past that you would say clear-cut and is going to be a state champion, but that makes it interesting because you have some very good, well-coached teams, Dion.
We're talking with Rob Thompson. When we come back, we're going to go ahead and ask him to break down next week's matchups in the playoff and a little bit more here coming up next on Ford High School Weekly. Welcome back to Ford High School Weekly. This weekend, we got some good matchups here at YurView. We got Owasso versus Norman North and Sand Springs versus Union. Here to break down the matchup, my man, Rod Thompson.
Yeah, it should be good, Dion. I mean, we talk about the matchup, and, man, it's so great to be able to televise these games. But when you talk about the matchups that we'll have, here on Cox, Owasso and Norman North, and I like this matchup. I mean, you look at Norman North, and again, Kellen McCoy has done a tremendous job with this ball club. They play extremely well. Now, early in the season, wasn't playing well. They've been out with COVID. They're back, and they're catching their stride momentum. They played extremely well. They beat a very good Midwest City team pretty convincingly, and Coach McCoy has this team playing well. J.J. White is playing well right now. Other guys are really stepping up. It's going to be a huge matchup when you talk about them against Owasso. Coach Brian Montanati, he has his team playing well also. They beat Booker T. Washington in the first round, a sweep of Booker T. Washington. It doesn't happen very often, but it shows you the caliber team that they have. They're long-rangey. Kyler Mann, you talk about so many guys, Aaron Potter is playing extremely well for this team also. And when you look at this team, they're so well balanced. Trenton Pierce can shoot the ball extremely well. And you got Caden Fry down inside, and they play extremely well, pushing the ball, playing different tempos. This is a team that many have mentioned to win a state championship, for Owasso. So that is going to be a key matchup, and it's going to be so good to have it because it's going to be outstanding basketball with some very good players that can go on and play, at the next level. Then in the other game, the elimination game, you talk about Sand Springs playing Union. Now, this is another intriguing matchup because you talk about two teams that are within the conference that are very familiar with one another. We talked about Eric Savage having his team play extremely well to upset Jinx. Came close to upsetting Broken Arrow. They're playing well. They're led by Marlo Fox, an outstanding player going on to play college. He kind of leads this team. And Savage, he kind of spreads you out, work the clock, they play extremely hard. Then when you talk about the other side, Union, a very talented team, they've been kind of up and down during the season. They're able to come and be able to play. They upset Putnam City, beat Putnam City West, kind of a rubber match between those two teams. They had both went 1-1 against each other. But when you look at this team, you got to look at the players. And you talk about Trent Pierce for this Union team. Long, rangy player, about 6'7", 6'8", can really shoot the ball, can cause matchup problems. I think he's going to be key in this game against Sand Springs just from the aspect of his size and his length. And Sand Springs don't have a lot of length and size. So there'll be something. And then you talk about, A.J. Reed, an outstanding guard for that team also. So those two teams very familiar with each other. You talk about adjustments. When you talk about Sand Springs and what they did against Jinx, they were very familiar and went to overtime. So it's going to be interesting how these two games end up. Great thing is, Dion, we get to cover them here on YurView, so it should be fun. Everybody should tune in.
Coming back, we got some more from Rod Thompson here on Ford High School Weekly. Welcome back to Ford High School Weekly. Well, we had some news that shook up the recruiting world here in Oklahoma and all over the country for, matter of speaking. Kendal Daniels, the number one recruit in Oklahoma for football, decides to not go to Texas A&M. They let him out of his letter of intent and decides to sign with Oklahoma State. Now, we got Rod Thompson here, the man from Beggs that they know and love, and another Beggs, guy, shakes up the recruiting world over here. So what have you heard about the situation, and what do you know about it, Rod?
Well, I'm very close to Kendal and his family, and a tremendous athlete. And another guy that's, he got the Beggs Demons pushing, trying to win their state championship. Also, when the last time they won one, who was playing, right? Well, we'll talk about that later, Dion.
Yes, Rod, we know the last time they won, it was with you. Okay.
but Kendal Daniels, outstanding kid. And this is a great example of how you try to tell players when you handle the recruiting process. Even the schools you don't go to, you want to be respectful. And if a situation comes up where they have to recruit you again, when you have a bad taste in their mouth where they don't want to recruit you. And so that's what's so important. I think in the case with Kendal Daniels, you have, everything changes. And I believe that he had, one of the position coaches who was there end up leaving, take another job, guy he developed a relationship with, which, somewhat opened the door. You get comfortable with a coach with guys that's going to be able to coach you. And so you have that situation. And then, and credit to Texas A&M letting him out. They understand how the process works. And, a lot of times kids get comfortable with coaching. That's why recruiting is so important. That's why they pay these guys a lot of money to get these kind of recruits. And so, of course, he's going to have different suitors because of the caliber player that he is. And he chose Oklahoma State. I think they did a good job of, recruiting him and through that process. And it kind of lets you know the job, I guess, that they did because how quick it was. A lot of times in these situations, when a kid decommits or get out of his letter of intent, it takes a little while to try to figure out, okay, are we going to go here? We talk to everybody, because as soon as he's out of that, then coaches, he's open up to be able to reach out. And so he picked the Cowboys. And so I know a lot of people in Beggs, of course, are excited about that. They'll be able to drive down and be able to watch him play. But congratulations to him and his family, and an outstanding kid. And I know, like you say, I know a lot of people that's really excited about this. They were hoping that it was OU or OSU, just from the standpoint selfishly to be able to go and watch a game. But definitely something to think about. And I know his phone was ringing off the hook with, other teams that wanted him to be able to come. But I guess they had sit down and pretty much had made a decision after, the night after that he made a decision to leave Texas A&M, but he's going to be a Cowboy. So big news. And when you look and you think about it, his teammate, Charles Brown, he's already committed to OSU, also another Beggs player. So, you got to wonder if that had any factor into it also. But I know OSU is high on his list, in the beginning. And he made a decision pretty quick. So a lot of people really excited about Kendal Daniels being able to stay home and then being able to watch him play.
Right. Does that situation happen often where a player signs and then, change of events? You said there was some change in the coaching staff, that an individual coach that he was familiar with and comfortable with, decides to not be with the program anymore. And he decides to, because of that, he's going to make a change as well.
Well, the difference is this. It happens way more, Dion, than we know. We just know about the high-profile guys that's in our area. It's just like kids transferring. It happens more than we know. We just see, the high-profile guys we have, and it's not like we have those every single day. And it definitely does. I mean, the recruiting is all about relationships, feeling comfortable, where you want to go play. And I think it happens commonplace. I was just talking the other day to a group, and we were talking about Cam Newton. And a lot of people didn't realize that Cam Newton went to Florida out of high school and then transferred, went to junior college, and then went to Auburn. And so, people are like, oh, Cam Newton. But if Cam Newton would have been from this area, a lot more would have been familiar about him him making that decision. So it happens a lot more than what we think. We just don't get to see it a whole bunch and see it a lot, when it comes to players. So it's definitely commonplace. It's something that happens. I mean, I think you see Texas A&M, they let him out of the letter of intent. They could have, probably fought it, but it wouldn't have looked good in public opinion and in the public eyes. And coach left to go make what he felt like it was a good decision for him. So I think it happens all the time, and respect to Texas A&M and letting that kid out of there, and then him making the choice to play for the Cowboys.
Man, we really appreciate Rod Thompson on his information on the basketball playoffs and his insight on the Kendal Daniels situation. On a sad note, though, I'm sorry to say that the high school basketball career of one of our favorites here at Ford High School Weekly is coming to an end. Aaliyah Moore had a season-ending injury where it was just an unbearable situation that she battled through with all season long. Although season comes up short, we wish Aaliyah a speedy recovery, and we look forward to seeing her again when she returns to Oklahoma as a Texas Longhorn.
3 seconds, 2 seconds at the buzzer on the way, and it's good.
Check out our podcast and past episodes at, yes, you guessed it, YurView.com/OK. And remember, only the best in Oklahoma make it to Ford High School Weekly. So thank you for watching, and until next time, I'm Deanna Mate.